Yeah, we got to figure that part out. That's amazing. I like using this ID. I like using it. I like it on foot, it doesn't. I think there's like...
Okay, we're going to begin. If I can get everybody to take their seats, please. All right, if I get everybody to take the seats, please. Mr. Warren, we're ready. Thanks. That's all right. All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to, at this time, call to order this regular meeting of the Stephenville City Council here on Tuesday, March 6, 2018. It's 5:30 p.m., and we've got a quorum. Missing Ms. Trussell, who is out sick, and like Mr. Pendleton's walking in the door, so we're good to go. If I can ask everyone to please stand, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States flag, followed by the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Okay, just since we got some high school and college students here tonight, I'll just remind you, Mr. Pendleton and I here always remind each other as we're saying the pledge together. He and I were both in FFA in high school, and we know that there is no comma in the pledge between one nation and under God. And so you don't pause if there's no comma. So if you say the pledge and nobody pauses, then you know maybe we're in FFA, but then maybe you can know that the writers of the pledge intended for that to be a single thought. And with that, we will move to our invocation for the evening. We have Chaplain David Bearden from Graham Street Church of Christ. So, Pastor.
You bow with me, please. Our Heavenly Father, God Almighty, and ruler of the nations, we give you our thanks that we can live in the benefits of your blessing and grace, where peace, freedom, and lawful government thrive. We ask for your Spirit to guide the proceedings of this meeting tonight. May wisdom and goodwill rule, and may the common bond of our united mission to serve the needs of the resident of this community rest in our hearts by our appointed leaders. We ask for clarity and discernment for this day and season of choosing our future leaders, so that justice, peace, and mercy may be present throughout the process and an orderly system of authority be maintained. We ask that we use this community to be a model city that shines forth the glory of your love and righteousness throughout the region, state, nation, and the world. And we pray this in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much for that. And also, just want to say a word of thanks for the Graham Street Church of Christ and the great work you're doing on the exterior of your building. It really is a great reflection of some great momentum that's going on in our downtown area. And it's a great reflection of the pride and participation in the community. So thank you for that. All right, we'll move to our regular agenda now. And first item that we have on the agenda, normally when we have a crowd like this, it's because something's up. Something's going on. And the crowd came to voice their opinion, which is one of the great things about government, and especially in the United States. But we're here tonight to celebrate an achievement that is historic in nature, and do so by issuing a resolution 2018 R02, and let me just read it whereas the Stephenville Faith Knights won its 7th consecutive six-man state football championship, and whereas the Stephenville Faith Knights were ranked 8th in the nation and named homeschool six-man national champions, and whereas the achievement of this result of determination, sacrifice, skill, and dedication, therefore be it resolved that the efforts and achievements of the Stephenville Faith Knights football team are hereby recognized and applauded, and we, the undersigned, on behalf of all the citizens of the city of Stephenville, express our admiration and gratitude to these team members and also to head coach Nick Braun. So we've got all the council members that have signed this, and if I could ask the team to come up here in the front, I'd like you and your coach me to present you with this resolution. Let's give them a hand. Yeah, we're gonna take a picture here.
Closer, we get it.
Y'all are good as long as I lean against the wall. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
I'm gonna ask y'all, if anybody, who is the quarterback? Okay, who's the center? All right, center, you can get up in front here. Quarterback, you get in the back. Tell me what y'all's best play was. Not up to you, but as you called the play in the huddle, what was the play you go to play? Sweep right. Okay. Had the center leading on that or something? In a way. Well, nothing starts on the team without the center. Okay, you got a quarterback here. Travis. Okay, Travis. I mean, y'all did a phenomenal job this year as a team. You've got a lot to be proud of. But you got to realize in an effort like this that everybody matters, and it starts with one guy, and it leads to the result of a whole team. And I just want to tell you from the citizens of this community how proud we are of all you've achieved. And Coach, I want to give you something on behalf of the city as a reflection of our gratitude. You know, what this team has been able to accomplish is truly phenomenal. You take competition at any level and realize that for 7 years you're able to achieve what you've been able to do. That is something really special. And we want to just thank the coaches and the parents, everyone that was involved with this. You guys never forget this moment, okay? Now let me tell you one other thing I want you to understand that's really important about what you're doing. You're thinking right now that I'm playing football, that I'm doing it really well, that I'm loving the guys that I'm with, and we are as tight as can be. We're brothers. But I want y'all to know that you're learning to be leaders, and we need you. We need you as leaders in our communities. And why do I say that? Because you're learning how to work together in teams. You're learning how to solve problems, like beat the other team. And you're learning how to communicate, because the center and the quarterback aren't going to do anything if they can't communicate and sweep right. Right? Okay, so thank you for what you're doing, and take what you're doing and make a difference in your school and your community in the future. Okay, so I want to give your coach something. We got some bags here that we're going to pass out to you and kind of speed things up. We got them here with your assistant coach. But Coach, I want you to go up here, and on behalf of the city of Stephenville, I want to give you a key to the city tonight and just say thank you for all you've done for these kids. All right. All right. Coach, you want to say anything?
So we were ranked 8th in the state this year, which so we play in a homeschool league, and if you get washed away a lot, then we win a homeschool state championship. And we do it easy. We did it easy again this year. To be ranked 8th in the state is a little different. It's the highest a homeschool team has ever been ranked in Texas. So it really is historic. It really is a great team. I mean, we did something that's honestly no homeschool team's ever done before. So we've won lots of state championships. Some have been easy, some have been more difficult, but this year was unique in that we ended 8th in the state. It's 8th in the nation, but honestly, Texas kind of owns the six-man football arena. So if you're 6th in the state, 8th in the state, the nation's not the same thing. But anyway, very proud of everybody. Clearly, it's just we work hard. They work hard. They take it serious. And so thanks for the recognition. Appreciate it a lot. You go on.
Okay, if I could, hey team, don't leave the room yet because we got to do something or another that's really counted. Okay. And y'all need to see this in action here because this is the way government works. So I'll entertain a motion to consider approval of Resolution 2018-R02. All right, motion by Mr. McClinton, seconded by Mr. Nix. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries by unanimous vote. Resolution 2018-R02 is approved. All right. Congratulations, guys. All right, now we'll move on to citizens' general discussion. If there's anyone wishing to come before the council this evening and bring up any topic, just ask you to come forward at this time. All right, seeing none, then I've got one other presentation to make. As the community knows that we've had a devastating ice storm, historic in nature, that many say is a 100-year storm, and our citizens have been truly impacted by that. It has been a wonderful to see our community come together. But there's been a group that has been here in town working in many ways behind the scenes, but from all over the state of Texas that have come to help the city recover. And so we wanted to recognize them tonight with a certificate of appreciation. So if I could ask Mr. Judge Camp to come forward. From the Texas Baptist Men Disaster Relief effort, these gentlemen have been all over town with chainsaws in hand. Taking trees down, stacking wood, and helping our citizens recover. And so I just tell you how much we appreciate your support of our community and the help that the Texas Baptist Men have provided. So I wanted to give you this certificate of appreciation for their selfless efforts in assisting residents of the city of Stephenville with ice storm debris cleanup to the Texas Baptist Men Disaster Relief Team. 6th of March 2018 on behalf of the City Council and the City of Stephenville. Next on the agenda, we've got the Chief King with the Stephenville Police Department 2017 Racial Profiling Report. And to present that report, Dr. Alex Del Carmen. So Chief King, you want to introduce this for the council, please?
Mayor, Council, as you know, each year prior to March 1st, we have to turn in the annual racial profiling report, and so we did that at last meeting, but with the caveat that Dr. Del Carmen would come and explain the report and the data and answer any questions. So from years past, if you'll remember, Dr. Del Carmen is one of, if not the foremost experts on racial profiling nationally, and analyzes our data each year and throughout the year keeps auditing our data and make sure that we're doing what's needed. So with that, I'll introduce Dr. Alex Del Carmen.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mayor, distinguished members of council. Great to be here in Stephenville, Texas with you all. Of course, you know, if I had known that I was going to follow these great presentations, Mayor, I probably would have declined and shown up maybe another another time. It's kind of boring to go into racial profiling data analysis after people have been given the key to the city and recognized for great things. But along that same train of thought, I want to congratulate the mayor as well as the city council for having such an outstanding police department. I'm here to tell you all that I do, in fact, analyze the data for the entire, pretty much about 80% of the state of Texas at this time, and it doesn't go unnoticed. The leadership that you have here with Chief King, as well as the good men and women in uniform. So for that, I congratulate you. For you know me well enough to know I don't say those things unless I mean them. I'm not a Texan by birth, but I sure as hell fit in by telling you that I speak the truth. And this gentleman here has done an exceptional job. And once again, the Stephenville Police Department is in full compliance with state law. So without further ado, let me just tell you that back in 2001, Senate Bill 1074 was passed in the state of Texas. This Senate bill actually requires for every agency in the state to capture data once a year and produce that data to City Council as well as TCOL, which is their accreditation body. That data also has to be analyzed. And there were some changes in 2009. We introduced House Bill 3389, which essentially what it did is it placed some penalties attached to the submission of the report, meaning that if the report was not submitted intentionally, cities were going to be fined by the Attorney General, and they were going to also, the Chief of Police would actually lose his or her license as a result of that as well. Well, this past legislative session, we probably had the most significant legislative change in Texas history as it relates to data acquisition and analysis on racial profiling. We call it the Sandra Bland Act, which essentially what it did do is it removed the partial exemption that by the 1st of January. And I'm here to tell you that Stephenville Police Department has actually done that. And so on the 1st of January, the police department was acquiring the data as required by the state and doing so in a proactive manner as well. That's really, really important for you all to know. Because as you can imagine, not only is the attention now nationally in Texas when it comes to this, but also, you know, the penalties have increased dramatically for cities that are not in compliance. And so the police department reports no complaints during the calendar year 17 on racial profiling. And then in addition to that, we actually, the police department has informed the public on how to file a compliment and or a complaint by having brochures, and on their website they have information as to how to file this compliment or complaint on racial profiling. And then various trends in the data are pretty interesting for you all to note, and I know you received the report earlier for my presentation, so hopefully you had a chance to look at it. But essentially 76% of the contacts that were made by police officers during the calendar year 2017 were made with Caucasian drivers. This was followed by Hispanics and then African Americans. The same was true with searches. Most of the searches were made with Caucasian drivers. This was followed by Hispanics and also African Americans as well. When it comes to the actual arrest data, it's very much a pattern in the sense that the same percentage, so to speak, of Caucasians that were stopped and searched, also the most significant percentage were arrested. This was followed by Hispanics and then African Americans as well. We have to compare the data to what we call the Fair Road Standard, which actually comes from the U.S. Census, and we compare Caucasian drivers with the Caucasians that actually live in the city, and we noticed that there were less Caucasians that were actually cited than those that live in the city of Stephenville. And conversely, when it comes to African Americans and Hispanics, there were more African Americans that were cited and Hispanics that were cited than those that live in the city. A simple explanation of that is that the majority of the people that the police department cites are non-residents, right? So you can't compare census data to what the patterns are as to who they stop and who they cite, but that is true for most agencies in the state as well. The requirement of Texas law is to report the number of instances where officers have actually given or actually been able to see the race or ethnicity of the person prior to detaining that individual. And the police department reports 111 instances where they actually knew the race of the person before the person was detained, and 2,873 instances where they did not. By the way, just so you know, this is a pattern across the state of Texas. This is very much a pattern across most of other cities in the state, in case you're wondering what that looks like. And then finally, of course, I always make recommendations for police departments to continue to negate the possibility of anyone that's racist from being employed or acting on behalf of the city. continue to collect data, analyze the data, particularly on searches with Sandra Bland does require that now. Provide advanced training, which the chief has done pretty much consistently every year, and then foster partnerships with organizations representing minority interest, and then continue to do these audits, which, by the way, I do on a quarterly basis. So I actually audit the data, and even though I'm a criminologist by trade, statistics is my forte. So as you can imagine, Mayor, I'm very popular in my graduate classes when I show up, and they all love to hear about chi-squares and regression lines and whatnot. But the quarterly audits have to be done in order to be able to ensure that the data is valid. And Sandra Bland places a great deal of emphasis on the credibility and the validity of the data, which is what we do through the audits. But bottom line, though, is the police department continues to do an exceptional job. The police chief is outstanding. He's been very proactive, and I'm really proud of the men and women in uniform in the city, and I think you all should be too. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Questions for Dr. Del Carmen?
Well, mine's kind of, it's a part of this. Could you talk just briefly about, there's an area of the statistic in here where it talks about people that are actually stopped and versus how many people have access to vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just walk me through that?
Yes, sir. So when back in 2001, when the racial profiling data was being collected, many people across the U.S. got together and started figuring out how exactly we're going to compare this data to, right? So in other words, once you have 5,000 African Americans or 7,000 Caucasians that you stop a year, what do you compare that to? So there was a great deal of debate throughout the nation as to what the baseline should be. And the civil rights groups actually advocated for us to start using what's called the Fair Road Standard, which is the percentage of people that live in the community that have access to vehicles. And that's what I'm referring to in terms of the data. But I'm the first one, and I spent quite a bit of time on the report, as I'm sure you noted, where I spent a lot of time basically talking about how this is not the best comparison. We do it because we have to in many ways, but at the end of the day, what really matters from a statistical perspective is not who the officers stop, it's what happens as a consequence of that stop. And particularly the federal courts agree with what I'm about to tell you, which is where the meat and potatoes of statistics are on racial profiling has to do with searches. In other words, what the outcome of the searches are and whether or not the search was justified under the U.S. Constitution and Texas Constitution. And so in our particular case here, I've analyzed their search data, and it shows that they're far above in terms of the contraband that they find versus most agencies in the United States, which is, deserves a lot of credit for the police department. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Appreciate
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for that report. It is obviously very important information for our community. It's no surprise with the outstanding police department that we have, but it also, I think, is an indication of the training that our policemen are provided to ensure that they are able to apply judgment in these situations. And so it's also good to know that we had a law that was enacted and we were proactive enough to be in front of it and actually comply, and that's an excellent result. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Savine, seconded by Mr. McClinton to accept the 2017 racial profiling report. Any discussion? Now we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, unanimous vote. All right, the next item on the agenda is to consider approval of ordinance 2018-007 to approve a tariff authorizing an annual rate review mechanism and Atmos Midtex. So, Mr. Barnes, you want to introduce this for us?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Shelley Burnett, the Manager of Public Affairs with Atmos Energy, is here to discuss this item for you.
Okay, Shelley. Good evening.
Not quite that tall.
Yeah, that's okay.
Your city, well, first off, I would like to introduce Wes Motherwell. He is our operations supervisor here in Stephenville.
Okay.
And so he actually has Stephenville and the Eastland areas and works closely with me, so.
And what else is he?
He's the operations supervisor in Stephenville and Eastland. He works closely with me.
No.
questions of either one of us, you both have our cards, so please call us. So what we're here tonight for is, your city is a member of the Atmos City Steering Committee. And that committee negotiates on your behalf with Atmos Energy. And what they've done, in the past, we had a 5-year agreement that expired last year. It was from 2013 to 2017. So that agreement expired, and so what this is tonight is the new agreement. It's not the rate increase, it's just the agreement, and it's the recommendation from your consultants for you to approve this resolution. There's a few differences in the agreement from last time. The main ones are, before we filed for the rate increase on March the 1st, now it will be April the 1st. Rates were implemented, we negotiated with the cities and the coalition groups with our company. And when we do that, it keeps the cost down for the customers and for us. So, and we want to have the best rates possible for you guys, because certainly you have options. And I know some people think that we're a monopoly. Actually, we're not. People can go all electric or propane or whatever they choose to do. So we try to keep our rates very reasonable. However, at the same time, we're replacing infrastructure. We've got aging infrastructure, and so we're replacing that annually. And we've done about $5 billion over the last 5 years. So, and we plan to do about $8 billion for the next 5 years. So we will be continually replacing this aging infrastructure. Approving this agreement will allow your city to receive the best negotiated rates for your residents and customers. And the rates would be implemented on October 1st after the negotiation period. So the new rates, like I say, this is just the agreement. It's the calculation for how we do the rate increase. And so it's just the agreement and the calculation. Those rates will be filed April 1st, negotiated by October 1st, and then implemented at that time. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have on this RRM agreement.
Any questions? Yeah, Mr. Nix.
Something you said kind of caught my ear because you talked about the aging infrastructure.
Yes.
And if we've been listening to the news at all, we know that there are some problems with aging infrastructure in some other cities.
Yes.
Are we addressing that proactively here so we don't suffer from some of the same consequences that they have?
Yes, and actually, we have a risk-based model that we are required to use to decide where we do what. The incident in Metroplex was a certain area. It's 2,800 homes. And what's happened in this area, from our geologists tell us that there's something with the rock formation, the soil, the rain, and so it evidently expanded and then went back. And so it's kind of an unusual phenomenon. We've never had this happen before, so it's kind of unusual. They've also checked other areas around. We haven't found any other areas that match this criteria. So what they've done is proactively evacuated all the residents in that area. They found leaks after this phenomenon. They had an inch of rain, I think, pretty quickly. And so they started having leaks. And so they had more leaks than they've actually had in the prior year, the whole prior year. And so that's why we've evacuated these areas. I've actually been up there working since last Monday. So been working all weekend and this week. So we're working, we've got contract crews in to replace this infrastructure, and we've evacuated everyone. We turned off the gas. They are allowed to go back to their homes except for one certain area, and which is an apartment building. And they have other problems besides us. And so that's where we are, and we're working. We're financially supporting those customers. We've done hotel rooms and financial assistance. So we're doing all that we can. We've got all hands on deck. So it's been quite an interesting process.
Thank you.
So.
Other questions? All right. Mr. Barnes, do you have any comments about this?
No, sir. As a member of the Atmos City Steering Committee, are a member of the group. This is as she stated, it's an agreement that was negotiated between actually he's an attorney, Thomas Brocado, and their folks. Our representative is recommending that each city pass this ordinance.
Okay. All right, any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance number 2018-007.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Pendleton, seconded by Mr. McClendon to approve ordinance 2018-007, approving the tariff authorizing an annual RRM Admis mid-tex. Any discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimous vote. Before you leave, I did have one question. Atmos, you talked about infrastructure and repairing existing and maintaining existing. Does Atmos have any strategy about gas line extension or new gas lines and how new gas lines are put into areas? Is there a strategic plan tied to that?
It's actually looked at on a case-by-case basis. So it depends on where the area is, how close in proximity it is to our pipelines, those type of things. A residential customer certainly can get, gas service. I believe the franchise agreement states that they get 75 or 100 feet. I'd have to look to double check. They get that.
So let me ask it
Now,
another
for
way.
commercial
Let me
and-
ask it another way, because
Okay.
you're, does Atmos look at an area, a region of the state and say, if I'm going to get gas lines to an area in a region that I'm weak in as far as capacity, is there strategies that Atmos develops in that regard?
We actually have growth surveys
Okay,
that we look at.
Okay.
Yes, we do. And certainly, we have one-offs, and there are a lot of industrial customers that would love to have gas and come to a neighborhood, those type of things. But the most important thing to realize in economic development is, they need to be close to our pipeline
Mhm.
because they have to pay, for us to serve them.
Right.
For us to be able to serve them.
Right.
And so we can't include those rates, those costs in our rates to our other customers.
right, okay.
So we do look at that, we do look at growth studies, yes.
And is there, I guess we can get in touch with you about the office that handles that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Certainly. And thank you guys for serving your community. You've got our cards. Call us if you need us. Mr. Warren, I will check on your account.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is to consider approval of ordinance 2018-08 to adopt the City of Stephenville Policy and Procedure Manual. So, Mr. Barnes, you want to address this, please?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, excuse me. This item was workshopped with council a couple of weeks ago. Coming from that meeting, council recommended some changes. You have those in front of you. There's the 218.03.01, the changes that came from that meeting. Mr. Savine that night expressed some concerns and questions about the policy and procedures manual, and we met with him yesterday. And there was one, I really won't call it significant change, but there was one change made. We changed the word salary to wages because it implied that we had some hourly people who were paid a salary, which is a contradiction of terms. Not everybody makes a salary, but everybody makes wages. With those changes, they're incorporated in the copy of the personnel policy manual, or the proposed personnel policy manual that you have dated 218.0305. With that, staff respectfully recommends the approval of this ordinance.
All right, any questions for Mr. Barnes? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 20180-08 as presented.
Okay, Okay, motion by Mr. McClinton, second by Mr. Pendleton to adopt ordinance 2018-008, adoption of policy manual. And I'm gonna just ask you to amend that on the, to be personnel policy and procedure manual instead of just policy manual. Any discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimous vote. I want to make one comment about this. I want to thank the great work of the Personnel Committee, Cheryl Truss, the Human Resources Manager, Karen Wilkerson, the Executive Assistant, Jeremy Allen. Jeremy, I know you put a lot of work into this, but also Alan Barnes as the City Administrator for taking the lead. The citizens need to know that this is the policy that will guide how the city staff operates, their rules, basically their personnel procedures. The document had not been updated for 12 years, and so this was a priority, and I think it just shows the professionalism and approach that city staff's taking toward the upkeep of policy within the city. So, Mr. Barnes, thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
All right, the next item on the agenda is to consider approval of contract extension with the Erath County Humane Society.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the current contract with the Humane Society is expiring as of April 1st. Sorry, I got tongue-tied there. We are recommending the renewal of this from April 1st to September 31st. Subsequent to this, what we are going to recommend is, in the future, just to give you a heads up, we're going to recommend that we go month to month until the new animal shelter is built after October 1st, because at this point, with the sale of the property, which is on the market now, we're going to accept bids and we'll sell the property. A new animal shelter will be built. And at this time, the Humane Society has no idea of what the cost to run the shelter is. We have no idea of what the cost to run the shelter is moving forward with the new shelter. So we are going to recommend during the next time, and this is the first time Drake has heard this, so we're going to recommend that we go month to month, starting October 1st until the new shelter is built. And staff respectfully recommends the approval of this agreement.
Okay, questions for Mr. Barnes? All right, Mr. Nix.
Mr. Barnes, is it your opinion that that would give them adequate time to prepare for that month-to-month lease arrangement and be ready to undertake that at that time?
Yes, sir, and I want them to also understand that it's not any kind of punishment. I mean, it's not there's nothing negative about it. It's just that when they get ready to move into the new shelter, their cost to operate very well may go down, or it very well may go up. And I don't feel comfortable personally locking them into an amount that they can't operate with, or that we're paying too much for them to operate with. And so that's the reason we're recommending the month to month at the end of this. And we'll get together and discuss it and so forth. And it gives us plenty of time to negotiate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Barnes is gonna make two assumptions a bit, I guess, based on what you said. So we're assuming by October 1, we'll have a new animal shelter in place then? Oh, that's pretty quick.
I don't think it'll be in place. We certainly hope it will be close to at least being under construction.
Okay. Do we have a time frame as to when that facility might open?
No, sir.
So, okay, so October 1, no matter what, we're going month to month is staff recommendation today.
Unless something changes. I mean, if there's a delay in the sale or something like that, then it may be more beneficial for everyone to do another 6 months or whatever.
And I'm sure as always, I mean, progress is always a lot slower than these things we like. We feel like communication has been open with the folks at the Humane Society and that we're making some progress in trying shelter and you try to work with other procedures?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Warren and I, Drake Warren and I communicate on a regular basis. I believe they are privy to where we are on everything. I think we talked, last week or so. And we keep them apprised of what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
So, on mine, it's blank. So are we just carrying forward the contract that was negotiated in the fall?
Yes, sir.
So you're gonna fill a dollar amount in there?
Yes, sir. And it'll be the same as the current contract.
Other questions? So let's clarify, we need to, what is the dollar amount?
96. Monica? For the 6-month period.
Okay, we need to understand, council, that the original request, let's just go through the numbers for us, what the amount was last year, what the request was for this year.
Last year, we paid, I believe it was $17,500. They came to us and requested an increase to, I believe it was $38,000 a year. At that time, the council agreed to a 6-month contract at, I believe it was $9,500, pending the potential sale of the property. The sale of the property was delayed because the prospective buyer had difficulty lining up financing. He has now worked with his bank and is ready to make us an offer on the bid process. I approved the bid solicitation last week. I believe I answered her last question, our procurement office's last question, either Friday or yesterday. So it should proceed to advertising. I have received one additional call expressing interest in the property, which I referred to our procurement office.
Okay. So back to Mr. McClendon's question, the blank here is gonna say 9,500?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion then.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move we approve an extension, a contract extension with the Erath County Humane Society until September 31, 2018, in the amount of $9,500.
All right, motion is to extend the agreement with the Humane Society through September 30th of this year for an amount of $9,500 by Mr. Pendleton, seconded by Mr. Nix. Any discussion? Okay, if not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries, unanimous vote. Now we've got the hotel occupancy tax funds. I tell you, before we leave that, I want to thank the Humane Society for your work on this. We have a plan, and we've been working together really well. As Mr. Barnes said, appreciate y'all's effort. You know, it was so hard, I think, recently to see the damage and the work y'all were doing through the bad weather, but to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
There is.
And
We're keeping our chins up about it. We've had a really good turnout with the work crew this past weekend. We're able to get a lot of the damage from the storm situated, get some more improvements made on the existing shelters. So we're definitely looking forward to this project, and we're trying to plan accordingly.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now the hotel occupancy tax funds section. First item is to consider approval of HOD funds application from the American Bucking Bulls Incorporated, Stephenville Spring Fling. So, Mr. Barnes, I'll let you take over this section of the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the American Bucking Bull Incorporated is asking for $6,500 for their spring fling. The event is March 24th and 5th at the Lone Star Arena. They have previously received $6,250. The event is going on, this will be its 9th year. They expect an attendance between 100 and 300 per night. They block 40 rooms and expect each room to stay 2 to 3 days. That's 80 to 120 room nights. I wasn't sure what this was, and it was explained to me today. This is where the bulls get rated for their bucking ability. It's not a bull riding, it's a bull bucking, where the PBR folks rank the bulls. There'll be, I think it's between 75 and 100 stock folks here in town, as well as other folks attending the event.
Okay, and you have a rep here from the organization if there's questions. I met earlier, so y'all want to come on up and explain your event?
Yes, actually, we will have both the, American Bucking Bull is where the bulls start. So they get bucked with a dummy, and you'll have your yearlings, your derby, your futurity, which are all 1, 2, and 3-year-olds, and then you also have your classic bulls at the end of the night with bull riders as well. So you will have both the competition with just the bulls, and then you'll have the competition with the bull riders too, so we will still have bull riders. But we have been here 9 years, and we're just looking for help with, we are trying to do a little bit different. We have a radio buy in place. We're also going to be doing, with the newspaper, working with the newspaper, and also doing geo-targeted Facebook ads and trying to do stuff on Instagram as well, so.
Okay. Any questions?
Once
Mr.
again,
Swing.
are we gonna use that software that's gonna track the area code?
We can.
I think we ought to do that for all of these events.
We have a code in place for our hotels that will track where they're coming from, and we actually added another event this year that will add another 25 to 50 stock contractors coming in, so it should be good.
That's great.
If I missed your application, I apologize. What have y'all received as far as funding in prior years, if any at all?
We just took it over, American Bucking Bull took it over last year, and we got $62.50. And we're just asking for another $250 for more geo-targeting, Facebook ads, and everything like that, so.
So you're asking for 65.
Yes, sir.
You talked some about how are you tracking, or how will you be tracking hotel rooms?
We have a code that we've set up with the Quinta, and we have them, anybody who calls in, they have the code, they write down who it is that's under our, branch, and they'll be giving us that at the end of the day, that we'll have all that information of who is staying under, because of, there because of us, so.
I would assume at the end you have no problem, of course, letting us know what those numbers are.
Absolutely.
Now, one more question.
Yeah.
I think the software we're talking about is where they're tracking the area code from the cell phone usage.
That's
Because it says in here that there's gonna be lots of folks come other than that stay in the hotel, so I think. it'd be-
Correct. Ashley and I have both nodded that during that time period, we will take a look at that.
She's like, sorry, I'm a little tall.
She's not even hardly over the top of the podium.
Fair enough.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the hotel occupancy tax fund application for American Bucking Bulls Incorporated as presented.
Okay, motion by Mr. Savine, seconded Ms. Zachary to approve the hotel occupancy tax fund application as presented, $6,500. Any discussion?
I'm just gonna ask a question, cause, at the last meeting, and not talking about you specifically, but at the last meeting, we talked about, I think we gave $7,500 to the applicant that came forward, and they were generating 300+ room nights for multiple nights. So I guess the question is, what's the pecking order here? Because to me, if that event's worth $7,500, given the numbers that they were gonna do, I'm unclear how you rate this one at $6,250. I mean, it seems like there should be some kind of pecking order here. There should be some, rating system that would seem more equitable.
I agree with that, and I am encouraging them to come back and ask for some additional funds out of the organization.
Okay, but I mean, is that something that we need to be,
Yes, sir. I was asked today by one of the council members why these keep coming up to the council. The council is, we as a group have yet to sit down and determine a procedure for funding these. Normally, these things are done at a staff level, and there is kind of a, for lack of better terms, a little chart that tells you what value is what. However, we have not developed that. We've not gone that far with council yet. We hope to have a tourism manager in place shortly, and hopefully that person will be able to get us where we need to be in that.
So basically, Mr. Barnes, you're affirming what I contended all along. We pulled the rug out from under an organization that had been handling this for several years without being fully prepared to take those operations over ourselves.
Okay.
Well, it just,
I think I'm confident once we get somebody in place and a year down the road, we're not gonna have these issues. To me, the way I look at it is just trying to reaffirm some prior commitments that we, at the chamber, had made with these organizations previously. So yes, I agree with Marcus' other comments that I'm not sure how equitable our process is at this point. At the same time, I think we're in a position where if we can maintain the status quo for another year, I really look forward to 2019 being a pretty different year as far as funding requests and our expectations and as far as amount we're willing to give out. So, Alan, I guess you're partially right, but at the same time, I'm not sure we're doing any better or worse than the chamber had done previous years.
I guess time will tell.
Well, I would remind everyone that essentially the amount that you're asking for was allotted by the chamber last year, correct? Okay, so we're dealing with a chamber situation. And from the beginning, I thought that was what we were looking at, was the fact of upholding some of the chamber's commitments as we went forward. So
That's correct.
we will have time, once that we have a tourism facilitator, coordinator in place to go over this and get some of it corrected, I'm sure.
That's correct.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries, unanimous vote. All right, I'd like for both of you to carry a message to the bucking bull world that the city of Stephenville is wide open for business for the bucking bull industry. And we embrace what y'all are doing. We understand what you're doing. Now even our city administrator understands what y'all are doing.
Could we recommend some
It's
names?
okay. We'll have you at the event and then you'll understand for next year. It'll be totally fine.
There you go.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. Thank y'all.
Thank you guys very much.
All right, appreciate it.
Sure, she said those meetings were right on the.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right,
That's
Mr.
gonna
Barnes?
happen now.
You ready for the next one? Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the Stephenville Sox have submitted an application for the tournament on the Bosque tournament. It's a baseball tournament that will take place on the great day of April the 14th and 15th. The 14th is my birthday. At Stephenville City Park, Stephenville High School, and at Dublin High School. They're asking for $1,800. They previously received $1,000. This is the 5th year of the event. They expect to have 300 to 400 in attendance, and they block around 50 rooms each year.
Okay, discussion?
Quick question, do I recall correctly it being, maybe when this event, maybe just youth sports in our area in general, some article in the paper last year about estimates as far as what these generate, we think, Jeremy? What were those numbers again, remind me?
A lot of it depends on how many teams are coming outside. I mean, they had a tournament, 42 teams last year, half of them from outside. I mean, the economic impact for that was $180,000 sales tax money that we were looking at.
Other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we, support this event at the $1,800 level that they're requesting.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Clinton, second by Mr. Savine to support the application as presented. Any discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimous vote. Thank you all very much. All right, now we got the Planning and Zoning Commission section. We'll begin with a public hearing on case RZ 2018-002. So at this time, I'll open a public hearing and ask Jeremy to give us a brief on the.
Mayor, members of council, applicant Jennifer Vega is requesting a rezone of 995 McCart, lots 3A, block 2 of the Butler Addition, city of Stephenville, Erath County, from single-family residential to multifamily residential, district R3. The comprehensive plan does call for this to be single-family. And currently, this is the aerial view of it. So it sits in a single-family residential neighborhood. You see multifamily across the street there, across the con. The future land use does call for it to be single-family residential. The property is served by a 4-inch city water main. Property is served by a 6-inch sanitary sewer main. The property does front McCart Street, which is served by the city. The property for which multifamily zoning is requested is bordered to the southwest and east by single family and to the north by multifamily. The proposed rezone is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. The single family is the current zoning, and future land use calls for that to remain single family. The P&Z Commission unanimously recommended that at the February meeting for approval to full council for the rezone. So I'll entertain any questions you guys may have.
Jeremy, the R3 zoning that is, I'm gonna call it north and northwest, northeast, and east of this block, what percentage of that is actually used as R3 or multifamily zone or multifamily uses?
And we looked at that, we did look at that number. I think the adjacent blocks that surround this particular block, that was multifamily, I think there was 84 parcels. I wanna say, and I'm not very good with math, 92% or 91% of it was single family homes in the multifamily area. I think there was only 6 multifamily actually units in the multifamily area. So there was a church and rehabilitation home across there.
So over 90% of that, even though it's zoned multifamily, is single family use.
That's correct.
And that's what the long-term usage is recommended to be, correct?
That's right.
Is that, I know you're doing the update now on the future land use map. Is this an area of concern or something, is this an area that you feel is, that should be looked at because it's so different?
Well, I'll take the politically correct answer. All of the areas that in the future land use
Good
will be
answer.
an area of concern. We are gonna look at every property. We've looked at already, we've had 2 meetings, and we're just touching the surface. We haven't got to this area yet, but we'll look at all neighborhoods. We'll look at, what the best use of the properties are in the future moving forward. So we have not looked at this particular area yet, so we don't have any update or even to be able to give you any kind of hint of what we're looking at for this area.
Did anybody of the surrounding residents come speak at the P&Z meeting about this?
The only person that came to speak was, I don't see him here, the realtor for the property, came and spoke, and so nobody spoke. Besides him, nobody spoke in opposition. There's a reason.
What was the P&Z's rationale for that not being spot zoning?
I'm gonna try to paraphrase without putting words in anybody's mouth. I think the concern when the gentleman who was representing was talking about the impact and the economic benefit to just doing some development in that area, that some of that was some wide area, any kind of development in that area would help. And so, the multifamily, even though it wasn't necessarily consistent, would help the area. And so any building would be better than no building. I think it's general terms of how
Sort of
they,
what they
how
were
they.
And was
If
it,
Mr. Mark Wallace is here, he's the chair tonight. If I said anything incorrect, then hopefully he would jump in, but
and was it unanimous, P and Z?
it was unanimous to rezone this property multifamily.
So, just touching, going back to that, is economic impact something that should play a factor in
No,
rezoning?
We do not look at monetary value. We don't look at that as a factor when we determine. The only thing that you can look at with zoning is the best use for the property.
And does that include integrity of the surrounding properties, or of the area, the local area?
That's right. That's what the future land use look at, is looking at, try to keep some of those areas intact.
And so as I recall that meeting, his entire argument was economic impact.
Right.
And, but even if you flip to that next slide where it shows I think the next one, factors to consider. So the question I had after that meeting was, should economic impact be included in this?
No, we cannot. When you're talking about zoning cases, you cannot take financial impact into consideration. It's the best use of the property.
And I might add one more statement to that. It was more about profitability than economic impact. The economic impact was almost secondary. Profitability for the development of that lot seemed to be more key to him than anything else. That was my opinion of his presentation.
It could have came off that way, yes.
But staff does not concur with that, because staff's recommendation was not to change the zoning to maintain the integrity of those blocks that are all at the present time R1.
Right. That gentleman that came, I wish I could have his name. He did talk about that house not being in good condition, and so, he did have a little bit of a take of the best use of the property is better than what it is there. So, he didn't bring all financial into it. He tried to twist it a little bit the other way too. So, just to give him, I don't want to put words in his mouth anyway.
Nor do I.
Other questions? What constraints are there on the number of units that can go into that footprint?
Well, based on how that comes out as a design, so, they're gonna have to, have a number of parking spaces for the number of units they have. So I
Right.
couldn't imagine, maybe a duplex,
Right, so even though it says multifamily, it's still gonna be constrained by the size of the area to comply with other requirements such as parking and setbacks.
right, and I think they were talking, like a duplex or something. I think one of Mr. Galater with the planning zoning wanted to look at it as maybe an R2 instead of a R1 or an R3, which would, talking about spot zoning, that would be the ideal spot zone. And we did not recommend that, and we'd have to come back through another process anyway. So that was the recommendation, was to switch it to R3, which would allow single family, and two family, and multifamily.
Well, what is the size of that lot?
I can come back after you public hearing, I'll try to get you an answer real quick, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
How many of the folks in that area are actually just college student rental houses versus single family actually occupied by owners?
That was a question that was asked at P and Z, and we don't have, I don't think an answer came through for that.
Okay. All right, well, let me go ahead and see if there's anyone that wishes to come and speak in favor of the proposal. Okay, seeing none, anyone wishing to come and speak in opposition to the proposal? Okay, seeing none, at this time, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we approve ordinance 2018-009.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Pendleton, was that a second by Mr. Savine? Okay, second by Mr. Savine to approve ordinance 2018-009. Any discussion? Proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. I just wanted to clarify, this lot is really only large enough for a duplex, really.
We believe so. I mean, just like I said, a lot of it depends on how they design it, but I would say in most cases. they
Or at the
probably-
most, maybe a quad.
It's tough to get four in there, but I don't want to say no, just in case
Okay.
they come back with some great design. But I think
Well,
it's
tall
gonna
and
be-
skinny, you know.
I think it's gonna be a duplex if anything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I didn't
No,
see you.
it's okay.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right, that motion carries. The nays, McClinton and Nix. Did I get that right? Okay, motion carries. I'll tell you, Jeremy, we'll move on to the next item, public hearing. Open the public hearing at this time for case number RZ 2018-003.
Applicants David Basket and Joseph Burgess are requesting a rezone of lots 1, 2, 3, 4, Block 8 of the First Fry Edition, City of Stephenville, from industrial to multifamily. It's the aerial of the property. The comprehensive use does call for it to be industrial. The property is served by a 6-inch city water main and a 12-inch sanitary sewer main. The property is from Pecan Street. The property for which multifamily zoning is requested is bordered to the south, east, by the railroad tracks, to the north by multifamily district, and to the west by industrial district. So here's a picture of the zoning, here. So you will see there's multifamily to the north and northwest. This is the comprehensive plan, so the comprehensive plan does call for it to be in stay industrial. When you look at, so the proposed rezone is not consistent with the comprehensive plan, very similar to the other one. However, there are unusual circumstances that go with this property, which exists with a railroad that borders the property and splits it in two. The land is shaped oddly and split into the two sections. Multifamily district is a more restrictive use and borders this property. So when you're looking at rezone cases, you want to see if it's a more restrictive use or a less restrictive use, meaning, is there going to be increased traffic or increased population to the area? With being a more restrictive use, in theory, there'll be less traffic to the area. So the other consideration is that it is an oddly shaped property and there is unusual circumstances that come with it. So with those being, staff did recommend approval of the rezone. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended at the February 21st meeting to recommend to full council approval of the rezone. And Mr. David Basket and Mr. Borges are both here and can answer any questions.
Any questions for Jeremy?
I would assume the conversation where the development can only occur, I guess, in the larger part of the lot.
That's right. The smaller, once the other side will not be developable. I mean, that's a word, I can't make that up here, but we won't be able to develop that property on the other side. And Mr. Basket is aware of that. We've had that conversation.
Other questions?
Yes,
Mr. Nix?
The unique configuration of the lot and going to a more restrictive zoning is why staff did not oppose this zoning change as opposed to the one where we did impose a less restrictive zoning on a parcel.
That's right. That was the part with the other one was you're talking about a single family residential going to a less restrictive use so that you can talk about multifamily. So you're going to increase traffic and impact to the area, where this one could actually be lessening the impact to the area.
Because the R3 is more restrictive zoning than the industrial zoning.
Correct.
Is this property currently developed with anything?
No, and I don't know that it ever has been.
Other questions?
Do you know what the intention on the small triangle is?
Well, we talked about different scenarios, and Mr. Baskett can answer any of those questions, so I don't want to put any word in his mouth.
Okay. Other questions for Jeremy? All right, if not, I'll ask anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposal.
Thank you, Council. My name is David Vasca, I know most of you. I was going to let y'all know the future plans for this lot. Mr. Borges and I have two current residents, two current single-family residents that we're going to relocate to this property. The lot to the south and west is, donated to the city for park with the train there. I don't think y'all would want it. The Barton Street is on the west side of the lot as well. Barton is completely grown up. You are having to maintain it. Our future plan, if y'all approve this, is we're actually going to ask the city to abandon it. We will hopefully take over that street, see if we can take the burden off y'all a little bit too for maintaining that. We are going to remodel these properties. They will be rental properties. We will put a nice fence up around the back of it so that railroad tracks, I know that was a concern in P&Z. And we will do it right. We'll make it nice. We'll make it what is right now kind of an eyesore, a nice property. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Baskett?
Thank you
Okay,
for your
thank you.
consideration.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposal? All right, anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, if not, we'll close the public hearing at this time, and I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 2018-0-10.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. McClinton, seconded by Mr. Savine to approve ordinance 2018 010. Any discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Unanimous vote. All right, before we leave this, I wanted to ask Jeremy one question pertaining to the zoning, future land use plan zoning. We continue to hear discussions about the fact that we've got this R1 designation in this older, smaller lot area of town. Is there and I'm asking this because we're going to continue to have these conflicts as there's incentive to redevelop this area. Is there a way to bring a portion of that through P&Z to the council for decision, and instead of waiting for the entire future land use plan to be put together? Especially if we're looking at an area that continues to be as cumbersome and debated. We seem reluctant to use the R1.5 and the R2 designations, and it seems like this would be a way to break that free and allow the development community to start utilizing and aligning the lot sizes with the home size.
Well, try to answer this in parts. The plan this month at P&Z to actually have those conversations about the 1.5 zoning and maybe reducing the requirement for the size of the lot. So that'll be a workshop item that we'll start to have this month. And then depending on how that conversation's come out, how we can implement that into our future land use. And so the way that we have our future land use plan and our committee is working is we have it broke into 5 zones within the city. And so right now we're on zone 2. The answer is yes, but the way that our process is set up, we'll just have to change our process. So
Okay, well, let me just make this suggestion, and I'm doing this in a public forum so it can be recorded. this community needs single-family homes severely. This is an area of town where infrastructure is already in place. So maybe we should consider this as a priority as a way to try to create new single-family homes in our community. I hear developers all the time say they can't develop in green space because it's too expensive. We've got this whole debate about cost share of pro rata for utilities. This is an area where utilities are already in place. We've got to find a way to get single-family homes infused in this community. All the builders are wanting to pursue the student dollar. That's great, but I hear from plant managers all over town that they've got workers that are driving from all over the county to work because they can't find affordable housing in Stephenville. And so I would just encourage the group that's working on this to consider how this area might be a catalyst for single-family development and redevelopment in an area with new homes being introduced in this area. So, thank you. All right, committee reports. The Charter Committee met, and Mr. Red Harrison's been the chair of that, so I'll turn the floor to him.
Thank you, Kenny. On February 13th, the Charter Committee did meet. That consisted of Jerry Warren, Alan Nix, Carla Trussell, Richard Petronas, Milam Hefner, and myself. Basically, we addressed some issues that had carried over from previous January meeting. And then we voted on each of the amendments individually. All those amendments did pass, most of which by unanimous consent. Staff is reviewing some of the terminology and the grouping of this, and tentatively we should have a full council workshop sometime in April.
That's correct.
And possibly we'll be able to vote and see which of these amendments will actually make it a ballot for November 2018. And that's it.
Okay. Any comments?
My question for
Commissioner Nix.
Mr. Barnes, are we working within the time frame to be able to call the election and have these on the ballot in November?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir, we're way early.
Okay. Brett, thank you for you and the committee's work on this very important matter. We got the monthly budget report from Monica.
Mayor, council, this is our budget report for the period ending January 31st, 2018, our fiscal year. And our financial indicators are what we expect, a few are a little bit better. The property tax we received in January were $2.5 million. That resulted in $533,000 increase over the funds collected through January 31st of last year. Normally, the county will collect about 90% of our property taxes through January, and the amount that was collected was 94% of what we budgeted. The sales tax we received was $465,000 in January. That was $81,000 over our target budget through January 31st, and we received $33,000, or 1.67% more than what through January of last year. The target budget for our operating revenue is $7.9 million. We received $11.3 million. That's $3.4 million of our budget, and this is a result of both property taxes, which are billed in October and due by January 31st. The expenditures, the target budget for operating expenditures is $6.3 million. We've expended $6 million, and that's $321,000 under our budget. The operating revenue received last year was $10.6 million, and this year's was $11.3 million, which was $723,000 increase, and that was due to property taxes, sales taxes, service charges, and some grants. The operating expenditures last year were $5.9 million. This year was $6 million, and that was $117,000 increase, and that was largely due to, again, paying our liability insurance annually instead of quarterly. For our new program, the month of January, we bought 5 of the vehicles for the Criminal Investigations Department, and $16,380 of the $875,000 budgeted for our street improvements has been spent.
questions for Ms. Harris? All right, if not, thank you very much. Right now, we'll move to update from CETA, the Stephenville Economic Development Authority.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Again, I'm Ashley Kierbacher, so I'm speaking on behalf of the Stephenville Economic Development Authority this evening. We are excited to report and kind of give you an update of where we're at since the last monthly meeting. Some existing projects that we had going on, Project Blue, we've all heard about that, but things are continuing to progress in a positive direction. Jeremy, Alan, we are all working in conjunction with those developers. Actually, the project manager was in town on Friday, and I drove him, so he'll be the one calling the shots for the dirt moving. He was in town. I took him to the location. He got some sites or some pictures of the sites and made some measurements and went back on his way. So it's moving in a very positive direction. Also, the infrastructure project that we've been working on, the sewer extension line out west of West Washington, is still moving forward. They've selected their engineer and now awaiting a few tweaks that need to be submitted and resubmitted back to the city. Some new things that have come about under like a business development category. Our relationship with the Dallas Regional Marketing Group has turned over 2 potential projects for our area, and the CETA office did respond to both of those. So as those kind of come into fruition, I'll keep you updated. Also, we had a local real estate broker who came by the office. He's got 2 commercial projects that are going on. He wants to keep those at a confidential state at this point, but he saw that partnership with CETA and the city and, you know, kind of moving these forward would be key. So we're happy to do that and extend our abilities and our help to him. Also, we confirmed actually today, the office of the governor reached out and extended an invitation to Stephenville to join Texas at the WCX 2018. So it's a conference, and I'll get more information to you as that approaches, but it's April 10th through 12th. And CETA said, yeah, we will actually, you know, attend that and participate on behalf of Stephenville. So we will have a representation at that. Under developmental discussions, I attended the TEDC conference that I made mention at last board meeting. I have followed up by phone and email with the Secretary of State, who, when his presentation was being given, he specifically said he's looking for rural Texas communities to partner with for business development. So that piqued my interest, and I went up and we've started conversations after that time. So I'll keep you in the loop on, you know, developments through that. Another interesting one is Richard Sealine. He's the executive director of Accelerator H2O. Today, when he called, he was in Washington, but this this organization is looking for innovative ways to reuse and reintroduce water into your municipalities. Again, he mentioned rural communities, specifically that might have dairy, you know, things that we could, you know, use as attractions for that. So I immediately called him, addressed it. We're gonna continue with conference call and see kind of where this goes. But the partnership for these programs and the funding, he said, is available. He has to find the match. So I see that as a potential. Also, under kind of quality of life, community development, the Texas Department of Agriculture has sent the application for the rural tourism audit. So that has been received, and I will forward that on over to the city so that when that tourism manager gets in place, we can submit that application and receive that. Also, as mentioned, retail coach. Jeremy has reached out. We've tried to establish a couple of webinars, but that retail coach software that we have access to, CETA does, that will be able to generate some traffic counts, some activity that these events are bringing in, and so we'll be happy to continue in doing that. Under business retention and expansion, CETA was excited to bring in at last month's board meeting a current manufacturer. We brought John Walker with Outlaw Conversions in. We continue to, our goal for 2018 is to continue bringing our current manufacturers in so that we can engage in conversation, introduce, you know, what opportunities that we have available that we can assist them with. So that's our CETA spotlight. We've got TechNip FMC
also attended a consensus meeting with Stedco and a couple of other key players. We're looking at workforce in our area, what are some potential areas of improvement, and how those of us who are in this seat can help and can accommodate those who are entering into the workforce. So that is underway as well. And last but not least, our executive director search is going well. We have had over 30 applicants who have submitted applications and resumes, and we are reviewing those, and the board will narrow that down to begin the interviewing process. And I'll invite you to attend our next board meeting, March 22nd, 3 p.m. If any of you are available or would like to attend, please join us. And if you have any questions, I'll take those.
Okay, questions for Ashley? Did you mentioned the two commercial developments that the developer didn't want folks to know about. Did they talk about when they might release that information?
Yes, absolutely. He wanted to be sure that ink was on the paper before he said anything, and I told him I firmly
Okay.
agree with him, but it sounds promising.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for the update. All right, move to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Entertain a
move that
motion. Go ahead.
Move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. McClendon, seconded by Ms. Zachary to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I had several questions in the airport contract, and I don't know if Mr. Barnes was able to remedy those issues or not.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Seems like we looked at that contract about 100 times. There was a couple typos, the date, in the third or fourth paragraph. It should be 2048, so the contract be a 30-year period, 2018 to 2048. Just going off the top of my head what the issues were.
The payments are due annually, or at what time?
And the way that we had set it up, it was being paid prior year, so, I mean, so starting April 1, they would have to make that payment prior for the entire year. We can set up those arrangements in any way you guys choose, but that doesn't need to be stated in that contract. I agree, so whether it's just that prior year and you guys are okay with that, or if you guys want something different on that, we can. And the last one, I think there was a question about what full-time, passenger pilot is, and there's no true definition of that for FAA. Just make sure they're doing something other than just being a full-time commercial pilot. So if they're doing recreational use, that would be okay too. So
What about the construction for the construction costs for utility extension? That was a little bit ambiguous to me.
I'm gonna let
Okay, I tell you what,
Randy help me
I
with
tell you
this.
what, but we have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda as presented. So pending any discussion on that, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion carries. Mr. Nix, I understand your questions, and I think that if there's issues with the agreement that you can't get answered, then the staff owes to bring that back to council.
Correct. Thank you.
All right,
I should have asked to remove that, and I didn't. I was too slow on the draw.
okay. All right, comments by the city administrator?
Excuse me. Mr. Mayor, we're going to have a called council meeting and a workshop on Tuesday, March 20th. The reason we're going to do that is because the number of committees that we need action from would actually encompass the entire council. And so we're going to ask that we have a workshop that night. We will also have a called meeting with some action that I'll be happy to discuss with you offline. The City Hall will be closed March 30th for Good Friday. And I wanted to give you a brief strategic planning update. We're continuing to work on the goals and objectives as outlined by the strategic plan last year. We have begun planning another session, most likely in July. I've talked with the facilitator a time or two. However, we as staff, in preparation for that meeting, are currently working on the development of a proposed new vision statement and a new mission statement for the city to reflect the direction indicated by the last year's goals and objectives and what the events of the year. We're also working with staff and there will be a committee of team members to examine the values that are important to us as an organization. And once these are completed, we'll present them to council for your approval. And we will use those as measure of success in comparison to the goals that you set for us in June or July. We are also exploring key performance indicators for the Tourist and Visitors Bureau over the next several weeks. We're going to be developing milestones for the new manager. Just some of the things that we have thought of. We've not finalized any of these. Are milestones for the development of the website, working and developing stakeholders groups such as the hoteliers and restaurants and retailers. And of course, the primary key performance indicator are the hot funds being increased. At this time, that's my report.
Questions for Mr. Barnes? What's the hire date on the Visitors Bureau position projected to be?
Hopefully by April 1st.
Okay. Mr. McClellan?
I just want to some kudos out to Ms. Barnes, the entire staff, from the very top of the organization to the last man. It was all hands on deck during the Ice-Mageddon, and everybody deserves a pat on the back for that. So, everybody involved there. There's going to be a lot of volunteer events in March. I know that, but I'm gonna tout mine. Mine happens on March 24, which is a Saturday, in conjunction, I think, with the Tarleton work event. It's at Bill Johnson Park. It's a collaborative effort to do the renovation project at Bill Johnson. I don't know, Jen, if you heard a start time on that? She says show up anytime you're ready, and then she'll be there for you. It's an opportunity to go out and roll up your sleeves, get your hands a little dirty, and do some good work. So again, that's the 24th of March at 9-ish, 10-ish, something like that. All right, that's what I got, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Savine?
Chief King, it's always nice to have official notification from someone else that you're doing a good job, but we didn't need that report to know that.
Well, I've skipped my last few comments, so this might take a little bit if you don't mind. Anyway, it's amazing how strange and amazing life is, and how a lot of things come together. But for those of y'all that don't know, I am a parent. I have a 11-year-old boy, and we're always looking for things that are more wholesome to do, and things that revert back into my past as I've gone through the phases in life. And one of those is definitely team sports. And for instance, this last year, it was tough on Mom and Daddy, but he played tackle and he played flag football at the same time. He's played select football. We've played football this time of year. So he really likes football. And a couple months ago, he came to me and he said, "I want to watch a football movie, Dad." And so I go to my football movie collection and I pull one out. And admittedly, I love this movie, but I hate to watch it because I get emotional over it. It's one of the few things I get emotional over. But if you, it kind of goes back to a phrase that you have to bleed to know. And if you've ever donned a set of football pads, if you've ever gone through two-a-days, if you've ever played hurt, cut, bruised, whatever, you understand the sacrifices that go along with this game. And so we pulled this movie out. Does anybody have an idea? It's not about a blue chip athlete. It's about an average person. Does anybody have an idea what that movie is?
Rudy.
That's right. It's Rudy. It reminds me so much of Stephenville, and it reminds me so much of life itself, that you can take something so simple, so minute, and it perpetuates into something significant. I'm not going to get into the plot of the movie, but Rudy believed in himself. He made sacrifices, and he was disciplined in those sacrifices, and it perpetuated something very significant. And I'm simply going to close. As a young man in one of the phases in my life, and I didn't listen to this too much, but now as I have matured and kind of look back, I had someone very important to me that always told me, preached to me, said, boy, know your beliefs, stand up for your beliefs, fight for your beliefs only if you must. And I want to add two things to that, and that is believe in yourself and believe in Stephenville. And if you get a chance, dust off Rudy. It's a heck of a movie. But better yet, and the reason for this talk is that my wife reminded me today that Rudy Rudiger, the real Rudy in the movie, will be speaking here in Stephenville at Tarleton at 7 p.m. on March the 21st in the Wisdom Gym. And I personally will be there. Thank y'all.
Okay, thank you for that.
What was the date?
The,
21st of March.
so part of the Wendell Sadler Speaker Series, Dr. Caleb Peak was largely involved in getting Rudy here. He is going to be here. It's one of the things about if it weren't for Tarleton and Stephenville, I wouldn't have this opportunity. And it's going to be great to have him here to talk. There's going to be a Q&A session with him before the movie's played, so I think if you come out early, you can see that, and I think there'll be more details coming out on that, so.
Time?
Really unique opportunity.
Time?
Sometime on the 20th. I don't have that. I think, around 6, I think the event starts early evening and then goes through the night, so. Mr. Nix.
And I want to piggyback a little bit on what Rhett said, because it is an outstanding community, and a lot of people don't realize that. I want to thank all the citizens of our community as well as all of our staff, because the ice storm we had was a monumental disaster, and our staff worked tirelessly day and night to help our citizens, and our citizens helped each other, Mayor. There were people walking across the street helping people get their cars out, get tree limbs picked up. It was amazing to watch the camaraderie and the cooperation of the city and citizens. And that ties perfectly to what Rhett's saying. It is an unusually good community with good morals and good relationships with those people around them, and willing to step up and help. And I'm proud to serve this community in this capacity, and it's an honor to do so. And we are all honored to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Zachary?
I would just like to really just second what you and Mark and everybody here said about the community. In my neighborhood, we had a bunch of limbs and various trees go down Blocky Road, and there were literally within minutes, there were neighbors, men, thank you very much for men, dragging some of these enormous limbs, and some of them were trees so that the traffic could go by. Then the next day I saw people come out of their houses with chainsaws and go to help their neighbors. It was just really outstanding. I feel very blessed to live in Stephenville. It still has the values that I grew up with, that I remember, and I'm grateful that that's something that our kids and grandkids are going to grow up with. So, thank you.
Mr. Warren?
Thanks, Jerry.
On the Atmos, yeah, they'll be back in June probably for the annual raise. Okay, here's my last bill from Atmos. It's $320.
thank you. I would like to echo the comments about the great work the city staff, Alan and Jeremy. I know y'all led it, but there was a lot of great work from the city staff, everybody coming out, and there's still a lot of work to do. And I think what we've got to do is keep the momentum up and make sure that the great response that has occurred in this community is recognized when it does happen. And this is no different what's happened in this instance, where everybody has come together in a very powerful and reaffirming way. And I think, Brett, that's probably because a lot of the citizens probably grew up playing football in Stephenville, so they can appreciate that. I want to tell you, as Dr. Del Carmen was giving his presentation, you may or may not know, he is, Chief King talked about it briefly, but he is an internationally recognized criminologist, and a lot of what he does is keep cities out of turning into Ferguson's. And there are communities that, like Stephenville, that are so blessed to have a law enforcement branch that understands that you've got to have a professional force that's well-trained, that's professional. And Chief King, thank you for that, and what your men and women provide to the city of Stephenville. Don't ever take that for granted, and let's always honor what you do, the sacrifices that y'all make for our community. It is truly special. So thank you for that. And also just want to end by saying that I thank the council for your work in bringing the events here tonight, and Alan for your work on that. We'll move now to the executive session in compliance with the provisions of Texas Open Meetings Law, Subchapter D, Section 551071, consultation with attorney, solid waste collection contract. 7:10.
Earl, how are you tonight?
But okay.
Other than the local level, and it's me from there, the only source I have. Yeah.
weeks ago, but he always liked it, 'cause he always, not bad gossip, but he likes to know things, so. Yeah, he is.
So y'all enjoy your evening.
I'm
going back to work.
Figured. I have work to do when I get home, but I've got to walk over to the courthouse. See what happens. I already did that. See who.
Right, I saw you being a good grandson.
Yeah, and that's why I brought my grandma to vote today. And that was wonderful.
All right.
See you guys. I'll take care.
You too.
All right, I gotta get up there and make those changes to the state.
So, let me just qualify, and for him, it was supposed to be like $30 for him, but I think it went up to, I don't know, 50 cents. But they had told him about 500 for him on the list, and it actually ended up being 700 or something.
Oh my gosh.
So, which is fairly comparable to what we have here, but they also have United Healthcare. That's who insurance might run for, so.
What's their staff?
No, well, see, they don't just have the one in Granbury, they've got.
That's too much range.
Actually, they have all along, it's together, but,
Yeah.
so I don't know that ours is really all that out of line.
Yes, sir.
Would you happen to have an Allen wrench somewhere? Spare one?
Not on me.
Okay. In your office or something like that? I can't leave until that door's locked. That's all.
Jeremy did, but I don't know.
I might have one in my office, it's
Okay.
let me look.
If it works. Yeah, it was.
Or now, there was one hanging above the door that leads out where the training room is, that conference room.
There's one here, right?
Yeah. Let me see if I have one in my office. Yeah.
How's it
Yeah,
going?
it works. It's going good. How are you?
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
glad to be here.
Yeah.
So, Russell's like, voting,
Oh, boy, I haven't seen him in forever.
said he can maybe start covering these again.
Oh.
Let's talk out of school.
Yeah, he's welcome to it.
Anything going on? Anything you need from me? Anything I could make your life better?
Actually,